talk one-to-one or as a group to your weather operators.
Oh,
and like Tanya said, it's open to anybody. You got a phone, you can call in a report. You got a text, you can text in a report. And ham, as you said, Tony, is elegant. Mostly, it's self-policing. You don't have all the silliness that you have on with CB. And the range, obviously, is much superior.
Yeah, well, it's gotten a little with the Morse code requirement.
Well, yeah, that's true. We don't talk about that.
Especially on 20 meters. Anyway, all right, I finally got this thing. I just sent out some quick messages on Twitter and on my website. So we'll get started here. I don't know that anybody, this is kind of an impromptu thing. I just thought I would put up on YouTube. It actually will record the video that I'm doing at the same time, and we'll have a little something for YouTube. And I think that will get us a better coverage with the podcast and with the YouTube link. So we're just going to try this and see how it works out. Anyway,
well, we're ready for your questions.
Yep, I'm just going to do the introduction. So yeah, I don't normally have two people, so it's going to be more difficult for me to remember names. Let me get a pen and a piece of paper real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Always good to be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if Tony's got his pencil and paper yet. No, I guess not.
So, I'm sorry, is it Tanya?
Tanya, yep.
And do you guys want to do first and last names, or just first names, or how do you want to do it?
I'm fine with the first name.
And
I have no problem. This is Skip, S-K-I-P, Voros, V-O-R-O-S, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hey, Tanya, and you're with Noaa. And
yep, I'm with Noaa's National Weather Service, and I'm the Skywarn. There's two of us that run the program, and I'm the field rep.
Well, that's a big deal. I didn't realize that there was a Skywarn section for Noaa. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's part of somebody's duties. It's not their main job, but that's part of it.
And I'm sorry, Skip. You did tell me whenever you first got on here what you do. Are you retired or are you active?
I'm retired, and I'm the executive director of the Milwaukee Skywarn Group.
Okay, well, let's try this. I'm going to press the button and try doing this interview. Try and do this introduction. Hey, guys, tonight we have an interview with two very special guests. Tanya with the Noaa Weather Service. Did I get that right?
National Weather Service.
National Weather Service. Tanya with the National Weather Service, and she's with the Skywarn group at Noaa. And we also have Skip, who is the executive director for the Skywarn group in Milwaukee. Is that right, Skip?
That is right, Tony. I'm the director of the Milwaukee Skywarn group. If you want to call us cheeseheads, we'll like that. We'll accept that.
Man, I like cheese. I told my wife that whenever I die, on my tombstone, I want a caption: "Cheese is our friend." I love cheese. But anyway, we're not here to talk about cheese tonight. We're here to talk about Skywarn. First off, and I guess, Tanya, you go ahead and start with what is Skywarn and how is it associated with Noaa?
Well, it's a part of the National Weather Service, which is an agency underneath Noaa. And it's a group that started, decades ago. It kind of came after some of the big tornado outbreaks that occurred, and it kind of formed in the Midwest, where people started wanting to get organized to get reports so that they can try and get warnings out before they hit major population areas and try and get people a little bit of notice to get to shelter. It's really, really grown over the years. The first Skywarn talk was back in 1957 in Kansas. Nowadays, we do over 4,000 talks in the National Weather Service across the United States every year. And we have over 400,000 people that participate in the program.
Now, when I think of Skywarn, I think of tornadoes. but it's really, it could be downbursts, it could be, I guess, hurricanes, it could be anything that's of a severe nature.
It's all hazards. So we're talking about people who report snowfall to their local National Weather Service office, people who are reporting even tsunami reports from different parts of the coastline if there's a tsunami coming. We have people that will report volcanic ash up in Alaska. They do the wave heights out in the marine areas in Alaska and off the west coast and the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast. So it was originally started for tornadoes, but it's definitely evolved from there because it's hard to put a warning out if you don't know what's happening on the ground.
Sure. How do you handle the accuracy of the information that you get, especially from, well, I guess there is some training for the Skywarn people, but I would think that they're largely not trained weather people.
Well, people who go to Skywarn attend some sort of training, and mostly it's a 2-hour class that they do. There's some classes now that are online that people can do. Last year, virtual training from weather offices to people around the country was really, really huge. But the accuracy part of it, we do struggle with that from time to time. If you don't see tornadoes all the time, a lot of those clouds can be really confusing. So we rely on the spotter report. We rely on the radar data. We rely on those environmental clues. Do we have the right wind shear in the atmosphere to really produce a tornado, or is this just not one of those expect more than rain, and so they're probably seeing a streak of rain coming out of the cloud versus an actual rotating tornado? So, accuracy is kind of an issue, but I would say that, everybody that is reporting is trying to give their best report. Having people falsely report things is a rarity. We don't deal with that too often.
Good. Well, I guess having more information is always better. It's almost like getting paged that there's I'm a computer person by trade, and it's almost like getting paged that there's a problem with the server. At least now you can go check and see if there really is or not, and if it's something you can work on. So I guess it's similar to that if somebody calls in a report, you go, oh, gee, let's go look at that. So especially if it's unexpected.
And in urban areas, you usually have more than one person. So if you've got 2 or 3 people that are all confirming what's going on, that really helps make you more confident in that information as well.
And Skip, this is probably more in your court. I always thought that Skywarn was pretty much a uniquely amateur radio connection. And from our little bit of conversation before we hit the record button here, it was I found out it wasn't. That it's kind of all over the board. Anybody can be in Skywarn. That's
correct. As Tanya alluded earlier, the program, which started in the Midwest, in fact, right around the Milwaukee, Chicago area in the 50s and 60s, initially got its impetus with the local ham radio operators. They seemed to have an organized communication network. They were disciplined in passing radio traffic, so it seemed like a natural marriage between the Weather Service and ham radio operators. However, because of the popularity of the program, Tanya mentioned over 400,000 people nationwide now, it's gone beyond ham radio. Anyone who has received the proper training knows what to look for, the cloud features or any other hazardous features, and knows how to make a valid report in an organized manner, can be a qualified spotter. So the ham radio is still at the basis of the program, but you can now use your phone, you can use your texting, any method you've got where you can relay your observations. The Weather Service wants to hear from you.
Now, I would think that Hurricane Sandy, that there was some efforts by individuals with Skywarn. Do you guys, either one of you guys, have any information about how Skywarn worked during, or maybe even after Hurricane Sandy?
Well, I'm not from that area. I've monitored some information on it. And because there was a significant high-impact hazard, the ham operators were performing. In fact, they were needed a little bit more than normal because the hurricane knocked out a lot of power. Because it knocked out power, it knocked out a lot of cell phone systems. The ham operators, having their own power supplies, being totally independent of the power grid, they have battery backup, and they were able to make observations accurately and then pass them on to the local weather office. As with any high-impact event in any community, you will have communication problems, you'll have power problems. The ham operators are self-sufficient, and they can pretty much start operating on basically a short notice of maybe half hour, 15 minutes or less, and get people in the field so they can relay observations to the decision makers on a local or regional level.
And they can also...
One of the things with the hurricanes is the ham radio and the Skywarn groups along the East Coast and in the Gulf Coast, they have some of the best organization and training because they actually sit in on county and parish exercises and get to actually drill with these people and show what they can do. So those communities are really used to relying on them. And again, we all pretty much have a cell phone nowadays, but we know that there's that possibility that it may not work. And the thing that usually always does come back up and works is the amateur radio community.
And that's exactly the direction I was going with this, because I think a lot of people make that mistake thinking that, oh, I've got a cell phone, what do I need a radio for? I mean, the cell phone itself is a radio, but it's not a direct communication device. It relies on multiple cellular towers, one at a time usually, but and if that cell tower goes down or the cell tower loses its link to the rest of the phone network or a landline or radio link or whatever they're using, which happens in hurricanes or high wind events, or like Skip was saying, power, you're not going to be communicating. What you have is a nice $400, $500, $600 flashlight.
That was pretty pronounced with Hurricane Katrina. In fact, that was kind of a tipping point that actually gave ham radio operators a spotlight of incredible performance in the time of need. Down in that area, radio, TV, internet, cell, power, just about every form of communication was offline and wiped out. The ham operators were the first ones in the area, and they just came down there and got organized with local emergency managers and started collecting and relaying reports. We today live in an instant gratification society where there's a trouble situation or a hazard or a threat, we turn on the radio, the TV, we go to our Twitter, our Facebook, the social media, but they're all gone. People do not realize how dependent we are on technology. But yet, over the years, for the past 50, 60, 70 years, the ham radio systems have never failed. Totally self-sufficient. And that gives the individuals running the system or the people wanting information a huge advantage. I know that come heck or high water, I'll have a ham radio system stationed here, and I will be able to get information and pass information. And in our hungry society, that is gold. Everybody needs to know now. The hams always come through.
Yep, certainly. And going back to the Skywarn connection, now, one of the reasons why I was bringing this information to a Jeep audience, a Jeep Cherokee audience, was most all of our members either have a Jeep Cherokee or they have a highly modified Jeep Cherokee with lift, large tires, and so on and so forth, which gives the Jeep the ability to go places that your normal everyday vehicles can't go, and actually even traverse high water more so than a pickup truck, because the ground clearance between the ground and the bottom of the Jeep is much higher than what you would see in a normal pickup. So you will find Jeepers going places where others would fear to tread, or would soon fear to tread if they made the wrong mistake in going the wrong direction. So I'm thinking, here's a group of people that are adventurous by nature. That's the reason why they're modifying their Jeep usually. And a great thing to be able to do, it would be to go out in these storms and report on them and help the community. And Skip, I think that you mentioned something earlier before we were recording about being able to go places where normal people wouldn't be and be able to report from there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts on that. Because you have people who have modified vehicles and can go into high water areas, somewhat rough terrain, log-in roads, that allows them to go in very rural areas where the population density is very, very low. But storms still travel through these areas. With people who are in nations, they'll be able to see things that much of the public won't see. Yet these weather hazards are just as much of a risk for downstream communities. So having your people in the field, the real field where the roads are not existent, and being trained is a tremendous asset. It gives them the first-hand information. They can relay that to the Weather Service and proper authorities, and it gives the downstream communities critical information. And most importantly, for the Jeepers, they have first-hand information of conditions that could be a threat to them and their families in the immediate area. One word of caution, Tony, I would add, we would love to have the Jeepers as spotters. But if you're going to be in those back areas, there's a lot of hazards back there. The Jeepers need to get a spotter training program and understand the risks of dealing with severe weather. Escape routes, when a storm spotter is mobile, are critical. And if he's on a dirt road and there's heavy rain coming, torrential rain, followed by an embedded tornado, he may not get his vehicle out of that mud road. Now he's at risk. We'd love to have the Jeepers because they represent eyes and ears in areas where people normally aren't. But yet they need to know the risks so they can perform their functions safely and accurately.
Yep, training is going to be key on this. I'm going to get to that in a second. Tanya, how do people report in on the ham radio? Do you guys actually have a ham radio operator on site, or is it collected someplace? How is that actually coordinated?
That varies across the country. Some of the rural areas, I live in eastern Montana, and an organized ham radio network is kind of difficult to do. We just don't have enough people for it. So in places like Oklahoma and Texas and along the coastal lines, they have a very formalized system. Everybody knows what they're going to do when they're activated. Some spotters are actually activated. They get a page. They're told, you need to go to your predetermined location, or we need people in this area. And they actually go, they sit there, they wait for the storms to come, and then they report as things are occurring. They'll report to what they just call a net controller, and then that net controller might be sitting at the Weather Service office, or they might be at a place where they can communicate more directly with the Weather Service office and kind of monitor everything that's coming in and help weed things out. So that's the amateur radio side of it. The other side of it, it depends on which Weather Service office area you're in. A lot of them have 800 numbers that you can call. Some of them have email addresses. Every office has a Facebook page. You can put reports on there and send photographs and those kinds of things. So a lot of different ways to get that information. But I did kind of want to say something about what Skip was talking about. You know, situational awareness is huge. And while it would be great to get those reports from those rural areas, I think another huge benefit for your followers is better understanding what that weather is that's coming. I think everyone's had that gut feeling going, uh-oh.
Yeah.
You know, I told you this when you first emailed us about doing this, that I grew up in Colorado, back in the mountains, national forest, and a 1942 Willys Jeep.
Ah, yes.
And when you get to the top of the mountain and suddenly your brakes don't work and you've got to crawl your way down in first gear, that's a scary uh-oh feeling. Well, a lot of people get that with weather. You see this storm coming, and it's just got this color and this look that tells you uh-oh. And so for your folks that are out there actually in the back country, in the backwoods, on the back roads, I think it would be great for them to kind of have a better feel to see what's coming and know whether I should be okay where I'm at, taking the correct safety precautions, or maybe it's time to work my way out of here.
Exactly. Now,
or maybe another way of looking at that is just about anybody has seen a tornado on TV. So it's pretty much a piece of cake to identify those things once they're formed. However, what really becomes important is, can you and your Jeepers, can they recognize the cloud features that develop before the tornado? Can they recognize the threat that's developing? Or, a lot of times, we've all seen these scary-looking clouds, as they're sometimes called, and they look threatening, dark, mean, and they're twisting and turning. But sometimes they're just nothing more than wind-blown clouds that look scary, but there's no real threat with them. With your folks attending a spotter training program, there are times when they could be out in a rural backyard area, backwoods area, see some possibly threatening clouds, and with their training, they can have the confidence to say, no, that's not going to do anything. Or they'll be able to say, yeah, this is stage 1. We'll be looking for stage 2 and 3. We better be on high alert and increase our awareness. We may need to get out of the area, or we may need to submit a report.
yeah, and I would assume the training would also give you some kind of indication of where that that possible tornado might drop, and it whether it drops on top of you or downstream, so to speak, of your location. So yeah, good information to have. Now, I think Tanya mentioned it's a 2-hour class for the learning about to be a Skywarn spotter. Now, you don't learn enough information in 2 hours to really be safe out there watching for tornadoes, do you?
You know, they say it takes 3 times of hearing something, seeing something, learning something before you really remember it. And so we have people that will come, and they'll come year after year, maybe skip a year, and then come the next year. We have a lot of repeat customers, I call them. They come back because they want to see the new videos. The science doesn't change, but if I've got new videos to show them of dumb things people have done in the previous year, or just incredible storms that they're all seeing coming across, that really draws them back. But there is, like I said, the 2-hour online training that you can do. There's a 2-hour in-person training. Some weather offices do a basic and an advanced course. So that would give you maybe up to 4 hours of training. I personally combine the two, and I try to keep it under 2 hours because it's hard to keep attention for that long with people.
Sure.
There's another program called spotternetwork.org, and that one has an online training program that you can take. And once you've done that and passed the tests that they have, you can actually become a member on there, and with your GPS signal off of your cell phone, you can kind of have a beacon flashing that shows where you're at, and then the Weather Service can actually see that you're located out there.
Well, this is all really
cool. It's kind of cool. We've seen a lot of that across the U.S. So you see a lot of storm chasers that'll kind of merge in one area in Oklahoma, and then as the storm starts racing through, you'll see them heading east as fast as they can.
Oh, I bet you that's very cool. Yeah, that's
you know, that's a kind of a cool site to check out. Spotternetwork.org.
Okay.
Skywarn.org should have the links to all of the online training and the materials that we have there. They're kind of a partner with the National Weather Service to get information out there.
Now,
we have a Skywarn Spotter Facebook page if you just wanted to do a search for that on a web browser. There's a Facebook page that has almost 8,000 people in there, and we try to share as much information about current events, identification of different parts, and we'll show photos once in a while and ask people to identify different pieces in it. And it's a great discussion group for people to learn more.
Now, the Skywarn, the 2-hour online Skywarn class, is that something that anybody can take? You just go to the website and start doing it?
Yep. Just go to the website, and it's through a partner for the Weather Service called Comet out of Boulder, Colorado. They put the training together based off of the information and the outline that we gave them. It's been out for about a year and a half now, and we've had over 10,000 people take that online training course.
Well, I would think it would be great information to know, just so for your own protection and your own peace of mind. So when you're looking at something that is in the sky, like Skip was saying, is it dangerous or not? So whether you're going to be a Skywarn member or not. Now, I would assume that you sign up to take the class. Is there some sort of a certificate, or what happens once you've taken the class if you want to use that to be a spotter?
Well, every Weather Service office is slightly different. Some of them, like me, which is in a rural area, I'm going to take anybody and everybody that wants to be a part of the program because I need as many reports as I can get. But in areas where the program is more organized through the amateur radio clubs and such, the Weather Service office might have an additional requirement that you attend an in-person training as well. So the best thing to do is just to go to weather.gov and then click on the part of the country that you live in, and it'll bring you to your local Weather Service office page. And if you look on the left side somewhere on that column of options, Skywarn should be listed there, and you would be able to find out more information about how that program is run in that local area.
Okay,
and
great.
Tony, this is an ideal time to follow up with what Tanya is saying, because many parts of the country now are gearing up for the annual spring storm spotter training programs. So when you go to weather.gov and it directs you to the local nearest weather office, you'll get that home page, and as she mentioned on the menu, there's the word Skywarn. You click on that, and you'll get the listing of the local area storm spotter training programs that each weather office is setting up. And most of the time, these programs are free and open to the public. There's a few programs that occasionally are for well-advanced users, and there are some programs in some communities. A college may sponsor a program, or a university, or an institution of higher learning may have a closed-for-fee type of program. But most of these programs are open to the public. They're for beginners, unless otherwise noted. And they will teach you how to identify, how to evaluate, and how to report severe weather, and the type of things that each weather office would like to have its community report. In this area here in Milwaukee, well, we're not too concerned about volcanic ash.
Not yet.
I hope not. Let's hope Yellowstone doesn't blow.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
But we are, because we're right on the lake, we are concerned about water spouts during the warm season. There are times when a water spout will develop on Lake Michigan, and they will travel westward onto the landmass and into the downtown Milwaukee area. I think a local weather office would very much want to hear about if something was coming on land that big and affecting an area with 600,000 people.
Of course. And any warning, any early warning that you can get is better. The earlier, the better. So whether it's somebody out on the lake or on the shore that sees it coming, is if you're able to, if you're a spotter, you can report that and potentially save lives. You know, as I'm hearing this, it reminds me a lot of what a volunteer firefighter does. They volunteer their time and help save lives, and there's training involved so that they can do that not only to help people but also to keep themselves safe. So the Skywarn sounds a lot like that, except you get to use your Jeep.
And that provides a lot of personal satisfaction. I got into the spotter program, the Skywarn program, because we didn't have one here in the Milwaukee area. But a couple of years back, I was running a Skywarn program on one of the ham radio channels, and I had mentioned that there was a tornado in one of our communities, and I said to the people, everybody in that area has to take cover now. It's approaching, such and such a street and such a city. About 6 months after I did that event, I got a phone call from a guy. I didn't know who he was from Adam. He said, "You don't know me." But he said, "I'd like to thank you." I said, "Well, what did I do?" He said, "You saved my mother's life." I said, "How did I do that?" And he said, "I was monitoring your broadcast on a police scanner when you had mentioned the tornado was going through the city of St. Francis, suburb of Milwaukee. This gentleman called his mother after hearing my transmission on the radio and told her basically, duck, run, hide, head for the basement." The tornado basically went through her yard or very near her yard, did some minor damage, but it did, in essence, save her life. When that gentleman gave me that call, I knew right then and there that all this volunteering I do was very much worthwhile. It gave me a thrill that I had done this for somebody.
That's a wonderful story. It reminds me a lot of back whenever I was, around 18, I guess, and we had a similar situation where I was, it was actually a training of storms coming in from Mexico straight across the Houston area. It was just like nonstop. These storms would come in, and I had my little ICOM 2AT handy-talkie with me at work, and I was listening to what was going on and talking on the net, reporting things that I could report, which wasn't a lot. And they were talking about a tornado spotted in Crosby, and I contacted our branch that was in Crosby, little town just north of Baytown, and told the branch, and I said, "Hey man, I think there's a tornado coming your guys' way." And he literally dropped the phone, and they all headed to the safe. It was a savings and loan that I worked at, so they had a safe that they got into. So I was able to warn them. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a great feeling to be able to have your ability to communicate like that, even if it's over a phone. It doesn't matter if it saves somebody's life.
It's a very wonderful feeling, and when you multiply it with a bunch of people who have similar interests, like your group, you have an added camaraderie, and you also have a partnership forming. And that actually increases the value and the reputation of your organization. No longer are you just a bunch of jeepers. I think that's the word you guys use.
That's what I was using.
Okay, I guess I can use that then.
Sure.
But now you're a bunch of Skywarn trained weather spotter jeepers. Suddenly, your position in the community becomes elevated. And to a certain point, people will start coming to you for information. That certainly opens opportunities for your organization to promote your mission and the Skywarn mission simultaneously.
Yep.
I have kind of a fun opportunity for you guys. We had a thunderstorm come through a very rural part of Montana a couple of years ago, and we put a warning out on it knowing we would never verify the wind that we thought was going with it because there's nobody that ever lives there. Well, it turns out the Bureau of Land Management had a bunch of researchers out there, and it flipped over their camper, and we have what's called gumbo up here in Montana. It's this clay that when it gets wet, it's just like concrete stuck on your shoes and your tires and on your vehicle, and it took them 3 days to get out of there with their vehicles because it had rained so heavy with it, and then we heard about the winds and all of that. So, it's kind of a unique challenge maybe for some of those jeepers looking for a new place to come. Springtime and early summer in Montana and some of our backcountry areas make for a lot of fun. But if you do get caught out there, we'd love to have reports when you finally get back into civilization.
Yeah. Well, I'm very familiar with the clay here in the Houston area because that's pretty much what we have since this was I guess part of the Gulf of Mexico way back when. So you don't have to go very far before you get into the really sticky stuff, and it does. stick to your vehicle. I've spent 30 minutes in the mud and 3 hours cleaning, just trying to get everything off. So I'm well aware. Now, Tanya, I have a question for you. This is a critical question. Now, you were talking about driving a Willys 1942 Willys Jeep years ago. What Jeep do you have now?
I have 2 4-wheel drive Fords. I hate to tell you that, but the closest GMC dealer and the Jeep dealer, I'm sorry, to us is actually 50 miles away.
That's no excuse, young lady. That's no excuse. What Fords do you have?
I drive a Ford Flex, and my husband has a 150.
Yeah, the 150, very popular. Yeah, I guess as long as it's four-wheel drive, it's just the Jeep can get in and around things a lot better. It's like a little goat. And,
yes, it does. That Willys Jeep went everywhere, and as I mentioned to you in the email, that we went places and did things I hope my parents never find out about.
Uh-oh, the truth comes out. Now we've got the dirt.
That's right. We've got the gumbo.
I got the gumbo. Yeah, you guys can have the dirt. I've got the gumbo.
I'm sorry, Skip. I think you were going to say something a few minutes ago.
No, I was just enjoying the conversation and taking notes here and waiting on every word you say because, you know, Tanya and I are both honored to answer your questions and help your group expand.
Oh, and
absolutely.
Yeah, and as I was saying before we started, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, especially this time of night. As I probably explained, I know I told Tanya, this is just a hobby for me, so I have to work during the day. The only time I can do the interviews is at night, so I really appreciate it.
Not a problem for either of us.
So, Skip, I know that there's you don't have to be an amateur radio operator to get in Skywarn. But obviously, it is a very good way to be a part of Skywarn, and there's a multitude of other reasons to be a ham radio operator. Now, I don't know if either one of you guys know, is there a CB contingent, a way to report through Skywarn on the CB?
Well, I'm not aware of any CB contingent here in the Milwaukee area. But I know that there was one up in one of the northern Wisconsin communities, and it was actually being operated by a volunteer fire department. They had some financial restrictions, and being a volunteer group, buying a good dedicated ham radio is not cheap. I mean, these radios will last you 10 to 20 years. You get your money's worth, but this community up north was rather poor, so they had all of their volunteer firefighters go out and get CBs. They dedicated a frequency, and they set up reporting criteria as to what they wanted their members to report as far as different hazards. And then they had one designated individual who was their net control operator. He monitored the network of operations. He would take these reports from the local CB operators and then relay them to the Green Bay weather office.
Okay, so really the answer to this is it just really depends on your area. There may be a multitude of ways. There may be one way. There may be a multitude of ways. It just depends on how your area is set up. Now,
that is correct.
Is there any good way of finding out how that works in your area? I mean, is that on a website someplace, or how would somebody go about finding out how they would communicate once they're part of the Skywarn program? Well, I guess if they joined the Skywarn program, they would find out.
Absolutely. You know, if you just the website weather.gov/Skywarn has a link to whoever the local contact is. There's 122 weather service offices across the country. So some states have 2, 3, 4. Texas, I think, has 9 weather service offices. So I would just click on the link on weather.gov/Skywarn, who to contact, and just get hold of those people and send them an email or give them a phone call and ask them how the program works in their area. In some parts of the country, the weather service is kind of hands-off with Skywarn. The emergency management department runs it locally. and they do all the recruiting. And the Weather Service might do that 2-hour training, but the local emergency manager does all the management of the program. And when they dispatch people or they activate them to go out and actually be ready to watch storms coming in, those spotters will report back to the emergency manager, who then takes that information and uses it for emergency response if they need to dispatch ambulances, whatever, and also to relay that information then back to the Weather Service. So it's a pretty diverse program, and we've been trying to get some standards across the entire United States. It was very homegrown for many, many years, and we're trying to get it all underneath an umbrella but still allow for that diversity to occur.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that probably about covers it. Was there anything that either one of you guys wanted to hit on before we wrap this up?
Well, that's really a loaded question, Tony, because together we could talk your arm off for 24 hours straight with the things that we'd like to share with your group. So that's why we've got you as the moderator.
Well,
but I think I can add
it's an opening, Skip. You can take it or not.
I'll be a gentleman and I'll pass, but I will say you might want to include an email address of both myself and Tanya, because some of your members may have some questions that can be emailed to either one of us, and we could filter out that information and cut to the chase and give them the information that they may be looking for, because we have such a vast knowledge.
Absolutely. And the one thing I was going to do was give you guys an opportunity to wrap up or add anything that you thought was missing, and then we were going to cover any Twitter, Facebook, or email that you wanted to give.
Well, I'd add one thing here as we wrap up. Tanya had mentioned that you can go to the weather.gov Skywarn site, and it will eventually drill down to a local weather office. If some of your members want to get some real quick visual training, have them go to the YouTube site, the site that has all the videos on it, and put in a couple of key words like tornadoes, funnel clouds, wall clouds, flooding, lightning,
Supercell.
Supercell.
Yes.
And any more, Tanya, you can think of there quickly?
Not off the top of my head, thunderstorms, hail, large hail.
And you'll get a wealth of videos. Some of these are terribly boring and really not done very well. And some of them are done with high-definition video, and the picture might be a week old, and you're getting fresh off the press material. This will give them an opportunity to see some of the things that they're going to be dealing with in the future, and some of the elements that they'll see in the training programs, but they can do this right in the comfort of their home. It's not organized training, but it's giving them some visual acuity of the things that they'll be looking for and the various features. I mean, like I said earlier, anybody can pretty much recognize a tornado. But tornadoes come in different shapes, sizes, and sometimes colors. It's seeing those variations that sharpens the Skywarn spotter's ability and his value to the program.
Right. And remember, guys, tornadoes is what started Skywarn, but they do all kinds of severe weather reporting. So certainly the tornadoes, you want the most lead time on that to get people out of harm's way. But
right. They have the highest impact, the greatest threat. But here in southeast Wisconsin this week, we may have some freezing rain coming in.
Yes.
Now, you don't think maybe that's a big threat, but if you're in transportation and commerce, that becomes a serious threat.
Well, I'm in Houston, so
the utilities, the power grids have a lot of problem with icing.
I'm in Houston, so if there's any ice on the ground, you get people that drive 5 miles an hour, and you get people that drive 75 miles an hour, because you get it all the way across the board. So, yeah, they shut down the schools if anything ices over here. So, yeah, it's a big deal here.
Well, when we get ice up here, it's just another day.
Yeah, of course, you're used to it. I mean, And of course, we always tell people, if you're going to buy a used Jeep Cherokee, get it from the South, because we don't salt the roads.
You're right. Up here they call those California vehicles.
Yeah. Texas vehicles too, as long as it's not North.
There you go.
As long as it's not North Texas.
Right.
Tanya, was there anything more you wanted to add?
Well, the only thing I was going to add is that the Facebook page is probably the easiest way to get hold of me. There's 3 of us from the Skywarn program that manage that page, and we try to respond to every message, every post, every question that we have. So if you are on social media, it's facebook.com/Skywarn Spotter. There's just under 8,000 people that are on there, and honestly, of all the pages that I get to manage and administrate, this is my favorite because we have the most fun and the most interaction with people on there.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, I was just really surprised to hear that you guys were on Facebook. It's a wonderful idea, and I do like the idea of being able to post pictures and straight from the phone. So it's a very modern age that we live in. It's not at all what I thought the 21st century was going to be like.
Who knows where we're going to be in 5 years from now? Technology is changing so rapidly some days that, it's going to be a pretty cool world in 5 years if you're a techno geek.
Yeah, well, it'll be video, not just pictures. So
absolutely,
the bandwidth will be increasing. Well, that's great.
I think it'll be 3- and 4-dimensional video.
Oh, I think that's just crazy talk, Skip.
Oh no, it's coming. It's coming. Besides, it's the future. We're techno geeks.
Oh yeah, and hams have played a very big role in that those technical developments. So
absolutely, yes.
Okay, guys. Well, Skip, how can people reach you if they want to get a hold of you and pick your brain?
If they want to pick my brains, they can go to the Milwaukee Skywarn website, and that is www.mke-skywarn.org. And there's a drill-down menu there, and they can get in contact with me directly just through the menu on the front page.
Excellent. So your email address will be on that site.
Yeah, it's on there.
Excellent. Well, great, guys. Like I said earlier, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and perhaps we will we need to get you guys on again sometime in the future and talk more about this. We'll just see how this is absorbed by the group and what kind of questions are asked. And I want to invite both of you guys to visit our website at xjtalk.com. And if you're confused by that, XJ is the 2-letter designator that Jeep assigned the Cherokee. So each Jeep has its own 2-letter designator. At least they started doing that with the CJs. I'm not sure about the 42 that you were riding or driving in, Tanya. I don't know that it had a 2-letter designator, but
maybe not.
Yeah, but I think they just called that a Jeep, and people rode around World War II in them. But after that, the CJ, the TJ, the XJ, there's this whole line of them. So anyway, xjtalk.com, you guys are more than welcome to come and hang out, and we may even get a Skywarn section so that we can have people's interaction on the site about Skywarn.
We'd love to hear, the stories and the things people have dealt with when they're dealing with a storm coming their way. How'd they get out of it?
Yes. And
how'd they get out of it? And from here on in, we'll show them how to avoid it.
Exactly.
That's great. Great information. Information's always king. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. And we will have all those links, those many links that they were giving up in the show notes. So don't worry about having to rewind and go look it all up.
Yeah, the easiest thing is just Google the word Skywarn. You'll find a ton of resources.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. It was my pleasure. Tanya?
Yep, great to talk with you all.
And we're out. Now,
all right.
Now,
we're done.